Welcome to... Can we start again?
I'm totally going to keep this because I can edit it out later, so it'll make me laugh.
Well, because I was like, what's our name? Because I always write down either M cubed or MMM.
Right? I always write 3M.
Yeah. Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
The podcast about ridiculousness and killers and monsters and freaky things and fascinating things.
And generic mayhem. Or
Generic?
sometimes specific mayhem.
Very specific. Yeah, as you can maybe tell from us not being able to keep our shit together. By the way, that reminds me, when I'm done saying this, we'll give our warning about language. We didn't start off well, but luckily we can edit this podcast. Yeah, so warning, not safe for work. There is profanity and death and things like that.
And torture and blood and...
Yeah. I try not to get too into the sordid details, but
True.
There are details that are going to come out. So anyway, who are you?
I am MB Partlow.
All right.
I am an amateur cryptozoologist.
Damn it, that's mine.
All right, I'm a cryptozoologist in training.
There you go.
Okay.
You're right. Okay. Is that all you want to say today?
That's all I want to say today. That really is.
All right. Okay. I'm Shannon Lawrence. All right, MB, okay. I've been watching a lot of Letterkenny, in case you can't tell. I am Shannon Lawrence. Oh, I had a whole sarcastic thing I was going to say earlier, and then I totally forgot it. Anyway, writer. You can find me at thewarriormuse.com. That's it.
So, I'm going to pull out my soapbox. Don't you just love it when I pull out my soapbox? I'm going to talk about the Great Maple Syrup Robbery. This is the most fantastical agricultural crime ever committed.
Nice. I like that description.
It is. Yeah. So in the year is 2012. So this isn't that long ago. This isn't something that happened in 1911 and there was an axe.
Yeah. Damn it.
Right?
You know what? Axes are heavily underutilized at this point.
I was trying to work a hatchet in. I could not. So the year's 2012. Canadian maple syrup is worth almost $1,400 a barrel, which is way more than crude oil.
Jeez.
So,
yeah, I know, because I bought some
oil?
organic maple syrup.
It's and
I don't like it.
So
I know. Ooh, you guys should see MB's face.
It's like,
and I knew.
It's like she just said she was an alien.
Listen, I tried, but I grew up on corn syrup or whatever the fake stuff is.
This is Butterworth.
And so the real syrup is not at all.
And I grew up on the real stuff. So there are approximately 58 gallons in a barrel. So it's $24 a gallon. Back then, 2012. Gas, just to give you a comparison, gasoline was an average of $2.14 a gallon, and milk was about $5 a gallon.
Yikes.
Yeah, so this is the good stuff.
For the record, I still use it in my steel cut oats as a sweetener, but not too sweet.
So you can put it in oats. You can pour it on pancakes. You can put it in... It's delicious.
I like corn syrup on my pancakes.
It is delicious on vanilla ice cream. It really is. I'm telling you.
Okay.
And people now, you make craft cocktails with bourbon.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
maple syrup.
Oh yeah.
And also, fun fact. And if Nikki's listening, this is a real fun fact, not one of your grotesque fun facts. She's like, fun fact, and it's always something horrible. But
I feel that.
2 tablespoons of pure maple syrup provides 35% of your daily needs for manganese and 15% of your riboflavin.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
I wanted to set the stage. I am a complete freak. Everybody who knows me knows I am a complete freak about maple syrup.
I should have had a camera ready just to take a picture when I said I don't like it.
No, I know plenty of people who don't.
I know, but you looked positively aghast.
The way I look at it, actually, the way I look at it is more for me.
Right. You get all the gin.
All the gin.
You get all of the maple syrup, and I get all the marshmallows.
Yes.
And mac and cheese if I really want, but it's not like
That's
I'm
true.
falling over myself for mac and cheese.
So, have you ever heard of the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers?
No. They sound important to themselves.
So, of course, being in Quebec, it's written out in French, so the abbreviation is the FPAQ. I'm just going to call them the Federation. FPAQ. They have been likened to a cartel. Yeah. Because it's a very sticky, very sweet cartel, though.
Wah, 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 wah.
One of my sources, there's a website called soyummy.com where I found a mention in this. I looked at Wikipedia. I looked at Pure Maple Syrup of Canada website. And there is a Vanity Fair article written about this called Inside Quebec's Great Multi-Million-Dollar Maple Syrup Heist, written by someone named Rich Cohen.
All right.
So he said, here's a direct quote when he's talking about the Federation. He calls it an iron-fisted cartel, having established a stranglehold on that honey-flavored elixir, which indicates to me that he's never actually tasted maple syrup.
Yeah, he thinks it tastes like honey.
It doesn't taste anything like honey.
It's not.
No. They're both sweet.
And sticky.
But it does not...
Viscous, even.
Yes. So, I don't know why anyone would want to cross these people, because they represent... This is not past tense. This is current tense. They represent roughly 75% of the global maple syrup supply.
I'm sorry. This really makes you want to write a fucking ridiculous crime caper.
Right?
With the syrup cartel coming after you. Like, you just imagine trying to tell somebody that they're trying to kill you, and you're like, it's the Syrup Federation.
Except they'd all have French Canadian accents.
And
nobody would ever understand a fucking word they said.
What? The Federation.
Okay, so they maintain, here's something else that the Federation does. They maintain a strategic reserve of maple syrup. Yes, I almost said that with a straight face. To me, I once had almost 3 gallons of maple syrup in my fridge, and I felt like the wealthiest woman in the world.
I'm just picturing GW now. Strategery.
Okay, so the reserve is housed in warehouses across rural Quebec in small towns. And here's apropos of I don't know what, an interesting factoid from Cohen's article was that New York State, which of course I think is the superior maple syrup, New York State actually has 3 times the maple trees that Quebec has.
Wow.
If they ever organized their shit
and made their own federation,
they could, yeah. So.
Oh my God, it would be a war. It would be a syrup war. That's amazing.
Right?
I just kind of want to go to New York to organize. I could do that shit. I could organize people. I will organize them into a federation, make my own cartel, and then just leave. Like, I don't need to. I just want to stir up shit.
I can introduce you to syrup people.
Yes.
I come from syrup people. We're a very sweet bunch.
Were you known to run through the woods with those little dealy bobbers and you stick in the tree and just drinking Spigots? Syrup from trees?
Well, that's not how that works. It's sometimes called heavy water, like the water from.
That doesn't sound heavy at all.
Because you have to boil you have to take the sap and boil it down for hours and boil the water out. You can't. There are people during the Maple Festival who will cook hot dogs in maple water.
Okay.
And, just sell to the kids, and they'll make the maple syrup cotton candy. You can't see me, I'm gesturing.
I know, she's making cotton candy right here with her ghost cotton candy.
So here's how it works. Quebec's bulk producers are required to join the Federation, which inspects, tastes, and grades the syrup. Now, some is sold immediately, but the rest goes into the reserve. Producers are paid only when the syrup is sold, and the Federation keeps $54 for each barrel sold. So here's the thing. Cohen, who wrote this article for Vanity Fair, talks about going to one of these warehouses. The way he describes what he expected is kind of like, what's that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he's the robot who comes back from the future? Terminator. Okay. It's a cross between a Terminator factory and an old Batman movie where there are open vats of acid.
That you can fall in and die.
Yes. And rickety boardwalks. And that's what he expected. He expected big open vats that people could fall into. Because what a maroon. That's how you store anything edible, is in big open vats.
That, yes, you can get all the dust and rat droppings.
Okay, so he was surprised, nay, shocked, to find tidy stacks of gleaming barrels instead of open vats and sticky walkways. And he constantly makes fun of Canadians in this whole article.
That's an American pastime. I'm U.S. pastime.
Yes. Okay, so in over a span of months from 2011 to 2012, 540,000 gallons, which is roughly, it's over 9,000 barrels, were stolen from a Federation warehouse in Saint Louis de Blandford.
Steal some shit from them if it was worth that much money.
Right?
Move some syrup on the black market.
So, the place where it was stolen from, because I know some people are geographically inclined, I am not. It's roughly halfway between Quebec City and Montreal. The street value, and that's what they called it. I didn't make that up. Shannon can't even keep a straight face. She's talking about murder and rape and dismemberment.
Rolling eyes.
I am talking about missing maple syrup.
I love it.
But the street value was over $13 million.
It's worth more than cocaine.
It is. This is the highest value heist in Canadian history. The look on your face is priceless.
Man.
So what happened? So it's like, how does one steal this much syrup?
Yeah.
One might ask.
It
was done gradually over several months. What they would do, it's stored in these white barrels that are only inspected once a year.
I wondered how the barrels could be described as gleaming. That makes more sense now.
Yes. So the thieves would remove the barrels to remote sugar shacks. That is what you call, well, we call them a sugar bush, but a sugar shack is where you make maple syrup.
Sugar bush sounds dirty. So it's really a sugar shack.
Okay, but they would take the barrels to remote sugar shacks, siphon out the syrup, and replace it with water, then return the barrels.
Oh.
Right? Clever. But here's how they got caught. They eventually got a little bit too confident, and they were just siphoning out the syrup without bothering to refill the barrels. So what happens is, first, the stolen syrup was trucked south to Vermont and east to New Brunswick and sold off in small amounts to avoid suspicion. So nobody pulled up and said, you want 78 barrels of syrup. It was, and most of these, the word the article used was not sold, it was trafficked.
Nice.
It's just,
I love it.
Yes. Mostly it was sold to legitimate syrup distributors who never suspected anything.
It was legitimate syrup. So.
Yeah. Syrup laundering. Right? Look, and you can see the laugh on the...
It's amazing.
So the gig was up in the fall of 2012. The annual inspection took place. So what happens is the inspector climbs the barrels. Mm-hmm. You can't climb empty barrels. They fall.
You fall down. You go boom.
Yeah. The empty barrels don't weigh very much. The full one weighs 620 pounds. So they were like, oh, it must be a fluke. And they start opening barrels. And not only do they find so many empty ones, but also
water.
So The police did recover hundreds of barrels. But remember, there were over 9,000 stolen. And they recovered hundreds. And 17 men were arrested related to the theft. But the rest of the syrup was never recovered.
It's in sugar shacks.
That just delights me. The fact that it was never recovered.
That there's like a hidden treasure of syrup.
So here's something I didn't know. So I've got a list of some of the perpetrators. So Richard Valliere, the accused ringleader, was sentenced in April of 2017 to 8 years in prison, plus a fine of $9.4 million, Canadian dollars, but still. And here's something I had never heard before. He gets an extension of 14 more years in jail if he doesn't pay the fine.
Okay.
I was like, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Raymond Valliere, his father, was convicted of possession.
Of syrup.
Of syrup. Of stolen syrup.
Stolen goods.
Etienne St. Pierre, a New Brunswick-based syrup reseller.
Reseller? I don't like it.
Avec
food.
Avec Caron, the insider whose spouse owned the FPAQ warehouse, the Federation warehouse, was sentenced to 5 years in prison plus a $1.2 million fine. And Sebastien Jutras, a trucker involved in the transport of stolen syrup, served 8 months in prison.
Okay, fair enough. He was just the trucker. It's like the getaway driver.
What cracks me up is that there's an episode of the sitcom Mom.
Yeah.
Where they go and buy a barrel of maple syrup that fell off the back of a truck. And it just cracked me up. The whole thing just cracked me up. But now having read this, I'm like, oh my God, it's a thing. It's
real
an actual
syrup trafficking.
thing. There's syrup trafficking. There's a cartel. And they keep and the article did, I will say, I've cracked on this guy, Cohen, who wrote this article, because he went into it with a lot of preconceived notions, and he spent a lot of unnecessary time making fun of Canada and Canadians. However, his writing style, he's a good writer.
Yeah.
He is a very good writer, and he could have done this. He could have done it better. He could have not gone for the low-hanging fruit or the low-hanging spigots, the low-hanging sap buckets.
That's right. He could have written a quality article.
But he also did talk about how the mechanics of how the Federation works and how they keep prices up, and you control the supply, you can control the prices. Yeah. And I'm like, the fact that they control the global
come
supply,
on, New York.
Right?
Fight back.
And it's now I will say this is an unsubstantiated rumor. I couldn't substantiate it the time I had. I've often heard when you go to a tourist stop in Vermont and you buy maple syrup, it's Canadian. They keep the Vermont maple syrup for themselves.
Which is weird because when we went to Idaho, we could not find, remember, Idaho potatoes. They were all from elsewhere because they were actually selling all of it out of state because it was such a big seller. And I guess people in Idaho are like,
potatoes.
Mexican potatoes are fine for me. I don't know why they were French there, but
I would have thought potato chips would have been.
Yeah, no.
Potato pancakes, potato.
It was underwhelming, the potato-ness of Idaho.
It really was. Although I did get that shot glass. I got a very ugly potato shot glass for Joe for his imaginary shot glass collection.
We have a shot glass collection, and I was finally like, can we just get rid of this? Because we don't do shots. I used to do shots. I don't do shots anymore. I'm like, why do we quit getting new ones, first of all? Because every time he'd go to a Hard Rock Cafe, right, anywhere on his work travels, then he would get one, and I was like, please stop.
Well, I guess I can see, as a souvenir,
It's small. It's portable. Now we get magnets.
We get refrigerator magnets. So we've always, the girls and I joke all the time whenever we go somewhere about, let's get a shot glass for your dad's imaginary shot glass collection. And we never do, because he's like, I was like, do you want me to bring you a shot glass? And he's like, no, why? I have one.
I have one.
I have one. I'm good. He's got the little metal one that's a half jigger on one side and a full jigger. Yeah, he's like...
The good one.
He measures when he makes a drink, whereas I just free pour. And he's like, on the floor again, are you?
That was one of the things I wanted to start learning when I was doing some, light bartending as a server at the restaurant. It was like I wanted to just do the lift up your hand over it and see, so you could, because that was how you would learn, right? Using the little jigger or whatever, you would go foop, foop. Okay, that's how long it takes to pour half an ounce or an ounce, or so most of ours were like 2 ounces or 1 ounce, right? So yeah, that's what I want to start doing.
Now I freehand it. He's like, how strong do you want that? I don't know.
More. That's how strong I want it. More.
Well, he knows if I say, would you please make me a gimlet? It just means, would you please make me a double? He's like, I don't even ask anymore. But we did learn, if I come home at 8 o'clock at night and say, I would like a drink, do not give me a gimlet. Because that fucks your sleep up really badly.
I thought wine was supposed to fuck up sleep really badly.
I think probably alcohol in general. But yeah, apparently for me, hard liquor after a certain time is just a really bad idea.
Okay.
So.
No shots for you?
No shots for me. No flaming shots. No.
Maybe the flame will take away the potency.
You know me. How long would it take me to set myself on fire?
Fun times.
You can find
that was
us.
A much better way to end that than on
set myself on fire. Thank
murder.
You.
No, the whole story, you dork.
It was a sweet story.
Oh God. So this is funny. I happened across this.
Is this a mystery, a monster, or a mayhem?
It's a monster.
Oh,
and it's mayhem.
Oh, I love it.
I came across it when I was researching my stories for Happy Gula Days, funnily enough. And I actually I put a little hint of it in the Hogmanay story, which is the New Year's, which I love Hogmanay now that I've read about it. It sounds amazing, and I want to do it every year, and it's the Scottish New Year's, pretty much. But, all right, my sources: Exemplar, The Culture Trip, The Carcinization, Mysterious Scotland, Mysterious Universe, Folklore Scotland, and the Glasgow Evening Times. And I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce some things. I almost put a poem in here that's referenced, but it was all very Scottish. And I was like, nah, I'm going to end up doing a bad Scottish accent in the middle of this. All right. So this is the Gorbals Vampire, or the vampire with the iron teeth.
Ooh.
Okay. Gorbals is located next to the city centre of Glasgow, Scotland. It started as a small village, but became a slum. It was in the middle of factories, and we're going to be going to the 1950s. So post-World War II. And these steel factories had been used heavily for that. Pollution from the nearby factories made a very nasty place to live. Very few people had running water. It was filthy, crowded living conditions, very overpopulated. The factories belched fire, and they smelled like sulfur, and they made loud clanking noises. So
very
it was
hellish.
Yeah, just behind them, there were rat infestations. It was obviously a place of poverty. There was gang violence.
Of course.
There was something referred to in one of the articles as the razor gangs. And I was like, ooh, and I kind of wanted to research that more, but I was like, stay. So it was a dismal, sad place. Nearby, there was a place called Gorbals Necropolis, also known as the City of the Dead. It was this giant cemetery, and I will be posting a picture on the Facebook page because it's the neatest, creepiest looking place. But it was the one green place that the kids could go. So the kids hung out in the cemetery, and it kind of had this view down over the city. So anyway, 1954, rumors started going around, right? The kids were like, 2 boys have disappeared, and we know it's a vampire in the City of the Dead, in the necropolis, with iron teeth. He's 7 feet tall. His eyes glow. They had this whole thing. It went around. And so, of course, this spreads like wildfire through the children. And they thought this vampire was stealing kids and eating them. They didn't just say sucking his blood. Some of them also said his companion was a vicious, evil witch. And we'll actually get a little more into some witchy things back then. So, then rumors went around, and they were like, I've seen him sneaking around in the cemetery. I've seen him.
How did they know he had iron teeth?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay. Good.
And they were sure that he was going to invade the city and start stealing all the children, and that these hundreds of children would be gone. So authorities, they were like, no, there have been no disappearances. The headmaster was like, you guys need to just calm down. Calm your tits, kids. Dismissed it. The adults were like, yeah, whatever. They didn't acknowledge it. They told their kids they were being ridiculous. But the children believed. And here's the thing. The children did not hide in their rooms. One day, the children banded together. School got out at 3 p.m. They put together all the weaponry they could. They got their dogs. They got crosses. They got metal pipes. They made wooden stakes. They made all manner of weapons.
I love this story.
Oh, God, yes. And September 23rd, 1954, hundreds of children descended on the necropolis at the end of the school day with their weapons and their dogs and started looking for they were determined they were going to find the 2 missing boys.
Yes.
And they were going to kill the vampire and his companion witch if she was there. So, again, go back to this factory. There was smoke, right? And of course there was fog and mist as the evening came down, because it ended up raining later that day. So you know that Scotland, there was this heavy moisture. There's flames coming out of the factory. So there's light and there's shadows, right? Just dancing between these graves. You're going to see things all over the place. There's the steady sounds from the factory, all these loud noises. And so and sulfur, right?
Yes, of course.
So this would be an amazing scene in a movie.
Yes,
of all these kids in their little school uniforms with their little shorts and their little formal jackets and ties and all that stuff. They're up on the walls,
swarming.
Right? There's some of them up on the walls trying to look down, and other ones are going through the graves. And they're looking for this monster. Well, the police get called, and this Deputy Alex Deeprose is just kind of told there's a disturbance at the cemetery. He's not told. So he gets there and he's like, holy shit, there's a horde of armed children. And of course they refuse to leave. And they're telling him, no, help us. There's a vampire. He took the kids. He's like, there's no missing kids. Stop it. So they ended up getting rained out that day. And so they went home when it started to rain. Then they came back the next day and they did it all again. And then the day after that, they did it all again. And then, of course, as with children, they started to get a little bit bored. And so fewer and fewer and fewer.
Right.
Now, back then, it's the 50s. Not everything would go wide across the nation, let alone the entire world. But there was a journalist who was looking for something interesting and happened to call the Gorbals Police Department. And one of the deputies was like, oh, this is funny. You'll get a kick out of this. Tells them what happened. Instead, they do a paper. They send it out to national news. It hits worldwide. Worldwide. Everybody knows that these kids went in there. So they start to say, they're like, oh, what is this? It's mass hysteria. These kids had mass hysteria. And then it comes to the Christians and the communists. One of the articles said, the Christians and the communists go, it's the American horror comics. Because at this point in time, there was this there were horror movies coming out a lot too after World War II. It was just the mentality of the time. So they had things like, I think there was Tales from the Dark Side or Twilight. Something had a magazine then that you would recognize. There was one American comic called The Vampire with the Iron Teeth. It was Dark Mysteries, issue 15 by Hy Fleischman. And so it did have it, even though it's not really what it was about.
Right.
And it was just a piece in a larger comic book. So MP John Rankin said, every type of depravity is created in these American comics. Kicking an individual in the stomach, kicking him in the face, gouging out his eyes. The drama, the horror. He didn't say that part. That was me. That sort of thing is bound to create a fear complex in children, which, in my opinion, sends their minds galloping in all sorts of strange fields. That was a quote. In 1955, in response to the hysteria, the Children and Young Persons Harmful Publications Act was passed by the adults concerned about their children's welfare.
Wait, say the name of that act again.
The Children and Young Persons Harmful Publications Act.
Wow.
It's still in place now.
Holy shit.
Just so you know, it limits how graphic material can be.
Wow.
That youth are allowed to read. So the thing is, though, the kids were like, first of all, this was a very poor city. It was very expensive and rare to get an American horror comic in the UK at all.
That makes sense.
And so a bunch of them were like, I haven't read a comic. They hadn't seen movies about vampires, and there weren't any out around the time because there were some people who did a study. They did a whole essay on this, and they were like, there weren't any that came out. I will get to some other things that were happening around then, though. There was already established lore both there in Glasgow and in the UK, about a ghost, or some said it was a Grendelow with various names like Jenny Greenteeth, Screeching Jenny, Jenny Bunt Arse, Peg Powler, Nellie Long Arms, and most importantly, Jenny with iron teeth. So there was already an established iron teeth lore of this ghost, right? Scottish mothers were known to tell children who wouldn't go to sleep that Jenny would come eat them. Some of the other versions, specifically Jenny Greenteeth, involved a green woman with sharp yellow teeth who dragged children into her watery lair. Some of the adults actually thought their children had seen Jenny with the iron teeth, not a vampire. So some of them believed in that lore and thought Jenny was there. The lore of Jenny with the iron teeth began near Glasgow Green, which was nearby. 2 women lived in a house. One of them, they called Jenny with the green teeth. Her name was not Jenny. Due to iron fillings from a local quack of a dentist. Her teeth had just been worked on, and so it's very visible that she had these metal teeth. It's believed the kids in that neighborhood named her this based on the poem Jenny with the Iron Teeth. It's A-I-R-N, Iron Teeth, by Alexander Anderson, which was written in 1879 and taught in schools and widely read by kids. In the poem, a boogeyman, Jenny, is created by a parent. So in addition to the poor woman picked on by local children, it was believed an ogre lived in the shed behind that poor woman's house, an ogre that would eat children. So we're seeing that there's already all this lore, right, about these children being
because, if you got bad teeth, why not keep an ogre in the...
Right, why not? Because you're already freaky. You're going to be the witch, right? They thought that she was a witch. This phenomenon has been researched. I found essays and papers on this because they wanted to know what happened. There were different theories put forward as to why this incident happened, that all these kids would so fully and firmly believe this, that they would go looking for the creature. Ultimately, it's thought to be a combination of many things, including the grim surroundings, Bible stories, fairy tales, urban legends, the imagination of children. In fact, the children at Gorbals likely didn't have that money, like I said, to get those American comics. What they did have access to were the newspapers, including an issue of the Evening Citizen that came out around that time that did a Ripley's Believe It or Not piece on Gilles de Rais, who was like a vampire form, who was said to have murdered 100 children. In the essay, Hunting the Monster with Iron Teeth, which is where I got some of this information, it's also mentioned the paper had done a story recently on the monster of Glamis, a vampire. Plus, there were articles around the same week about child molestation occurring. So if they were seeing the newspapers, which they're far more likely to have been seeing instead of these imported comics.
And back then, the news was written much more floridly.
Oh, yeah.
It was very overblown and very much trying to attract readers and not so heavy on let's just stick to the facts.
Definitely. And then you have to bear in mind what it was like living around these steel factories. I mean, it sounds like this visual, and it's a cacophony all around. Visually, the sounds, the smells, you're basically living in what they describe hell as.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're living in this.
So the gates to hell are really just a gate to 1950s Glasgow.
It actually has a name. The one that's closest to him was Dixon's Blazes. So I'm pretty sure that's Hellmouth.
Oy. So
the very existence was painted with the red shades of horror because the fire would light the fog red.
Oh, so that would be creepy.
And this was the cause of their tough lives, right? Where most of their families worked in these steel mills. A lot of them died in these steel mills. And those people were buried in the necropolis. Yeah. So a lot of them were killed by this metal, right? Somehow by the steel factory, by cogs and gears, so it was this very deeply integrated thing.
And there was probably a lot of health issues.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
Associated with it.
Also, parents were known to say if kids misbehaved, they would throw them into the fires at Dixon's Blazes. So one more thing, let's threaten them with a killer creature and the steel factory.
Yeah, and then threaten to throw them in the furnace.
And then be like, it's American comics! Okay. So not only that, one article I found referred to a series of 8 hunts put on by children between the 1930s and the 1980s where children banded together to hunt monsters. Some of the monsters that this happened with were Spring-Heeled Jack, an unnamed banshee, And this is a quote from this whole little list here. Spring-heeled Jack, an unnamed banshee and ghost known as the White Lady and the Gray Lady. So there are all sorts of incidents where kids had band together over the years and gone after them. It makes me think of It, right? It's that mentality like, well, the adults don't believe us. We are going to take care of it.
Or it could make you think of the Children of the Corn.
They were the ones doing it. So adults in different cultures had long been threatening their children with, as the author referred to them, Kinderschreck. So a little German word, right? But other creatures had iron teeth, including Baba Yaga in some descriptions. Tom Dokken was one. I think that was in Yorkshire. And the West African Asenbosum, which I'm sure I said wrong, who also had iron teeth, but he also had iron hooks in place of its feet so he could hook the children from up in the trees. Which makes me want to look at that one. So, much like modern days, it was simpler to blame. Now we're like, it's music, it's video games, it's horror films.
Comic books.
The people of the time grasped onto American horror comics and made that the problem. Tried to make sure kids couldn't get their hands on them by banning the things that were too graphic. But the parents were most likely to blame.
Yeah.
For installing these fears in their children to get them to behave, to get them to go to bed. In much the same way as fairy tales have been used through the ages to issue cautionary tales to children. To keep them from talking to strangers or gallivanting off into the woods, right? It was always the woods are bad, the woods are bad, don't go into the woods. An effort to keep their children safe and in line led to a fear that drove children to try to defend themselves against the monster they believed had descended upon their place of safety and play. Just thought that was interesting that act is still going.
Yeah. Is it one of those things that's just on the books, but it's not enforced? Or is it?
I can't imagine they have much luck enforcing it, but I imagine it's like when they were selling Playboy in like a convenience store and they'll have the black cover or whatever. It depends on the clerk and whether they say, So is it, I'm sure there are plenty of them selling it.
Well, and now it's available online.
Yeah. Just stream some Netflix and, But
some of the names of Jenny Greenteeth were quite amusing.
Buntars.
I'm like,
I bet that means a thing. I'm fairly certain, actually.
Yep.
So... Yeah, and I could have gone on, each of them had a different description, like each of those names, and I was like, but, Jenny with the iron teeth. Or the iron teeth. The iron teeth.
Yeah, we're not going to do bad Scottish accents for you, because they would be bad.
They would be bad.
We might be doing them off the air afterward.
A little Sean Connery in tribute. Yes. Lucky penny.
Craig Ferguson was raised in Glasgow. I'm like, I wonder if he's ever heard of this.
Probably. Let's write to him.
Dear Craigie Ferd.
Hey, Craigie Ferd.
Craigie Ferd.
I would like to ask you a question.
Can we ask you about Glasgow in the years before you were born?
I just love it. There's artwork that's out there of the kids in their little blue blazers and gray shorts and their weapons.
Okay, so now if you see a couple of hundred armed children in school uniforms, that would be an incident when it would be correct to call the police.
That is correct, and they did, but they just said there's a disturbance.
There's a disturbance
at the necropolis. But could you imagine? Once you see this picture on Facebook, and I showed it to you, just living under that and this horrifying steel Dixon's blazes, just fire shooting out, and it's like you live near a dragon or something.
I just imagine the cops showing up. And there's all these kids with I picture baseball bats.
Oh, holy shite.
And, chunks of wood and hose and shovels and he just thinks to himself, I do not get paid enough.
I'm like, I'm not going in there.
I'm not.
Forget this noise.
Excuse me, I'm going to call for backup. What the fuck? I would like to speak with the dispatcher, please. Exactly how do you define disturbance?
Disturbance.
Because it is incorrect. Incorrect.
That is incorrect. That's right. All right. Well, that ends it. And for once, it's not an hour and a half. It's just below. So happy.
So check us out. We are on Facebook, Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem. We are on, we have a website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
And you can email us about anything. You ask questions. You can send us ideas for something you'd like us to research. Or you can send us your own stories about your hauntings or your interactions with Bigfoot or just serial killer that tried to kill your mom. I don't know. Things like that. And you can send that to mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. There is no and in that or the website.
And you can get links to both of those off of the Facebook page. Generally, people find it easier to find stuff there.
So yes, please spread your likes around. Follow us on Facebook. Follow our podcast and like it on whatever format you're using, platform. All right, you guys. So
stay scary.
stay creepy.
Bye.
Bye.